Striker Scorpion 82 is now sponsored by Warhammer Combat Cards, a card battle game featuring your favourite Citadel miniatures from the 40k universe. Free to download and play, link is in the video description below or on the channel homepage, and by using the unique link it helps support the channel. Thanks and enjoy the game. Right, welcome to another Battlefield terrain tutorial. If you haven't checked out the other videos in this series, then do take a look. If you go to the channel homepage and scroll down to the terrain and painting tutorial section, you'll see the other videos that we've already produced in this series. The whole point of this video is to show you from start to finish how you can set up your own games of 40k. It is great to have armies painted on the table, but it's very rewarding to have decent terrain on the board for yourself and others to enjoy. And the idea of this video is to show you how straightforward it can be, to show you step by step. So we'll start with the foundation with this battle mat here, and then we'll build up the terrain. I'll do a few walkthroughs as well to show you how to construct and build different parts and different things that you can do. So this is like Adeptus Mechanicus terrain here, sort of a Martian type landscape, so a perfect battlefield for any Imperial forces to be fighting across, and indeed any Chaos or Xenos factions to be invading and raiding and so on, and also a great homeworld for any kind of Adeptus Mechanicus and Imperial Knight forces to play on. So plenty of uses here for this style of terrain. So as per usual, what I'll do to help you out is to put links to any resources in the video description below. You should also see them in the comments section as well. So there'll be links to other videos that I've created. There's different tutorials that are available for the different elements that you see on this table here, and also for the different products and accessories and things that you'll need to get this terrain set up. But there's no reason why you can't achieve the same results that you see here. I'll show you all the tricks and tips to help you get the terrain set up that you see. So we'll start the setting up here. So this table took me about 15-20 minutes to set up, not too long at all, and it'll take me about the same amount of time to pack it down again. So time-wise, it's not too bad at all. Some people are intimidated by the amount of stuff on the board and all the little details like the stones and scatter and so on, but it's not too bad. It doesn't take too long, and that's just by myself. If you've got friends helping you, then you can get it done a lot quicker. So we'll start with the foundation. As per usual, so you're trying to get a good foundation that you then place your terrain and other accessories on top. So this battle mat is from Gamemat.eu. Forges of Mars is the title of it. You can find it there on the Gamemat.eu website. I'll put a link for it in the video description below as well. This particular one is 6x4 in size, so for our regular games of 2,000 points, Strike Force of 40k, we just mark a boundary here so the table's 60 inches across and it ends just there. They do a wide variety of sizes now for their battle mats, so the standard 60-inch across battle mats, I believe, are available from them in a variety of sizes. They do double-sided battle mats as well, so actually you get two designs in one. So usually battle mats have the rubber backing there, but they do a number of mats where you get two designs, so that's very, very good value for money as well. So the great thing about the battle mats is that you just need a flat surface. You just roll them out, they sit nice and flat, and then they're nice and soft, so figure friendly, nice and quiet when you're rolling the dice. It's not a clattering sound, so you're off to a good start with your foundation. The other thing is that with the battle mat, it will give you your colour scheme to try and match up with your terrain. So, or you get your terrain to match in with the colour scheme is the idea. So that's one of the things that can make terrain not look very good, is when you've got a battle mat of one particular colour scheme and then you start placing terrain that doesn't really match in. So try and remember that, to use terrain that matches in nicely with the battle mat that you have. So that'll be your foundation. That's that done. Nice and straightforward. The battle mat's just to get you a step ahead nice and quick. Back in the day you had to create a board, paint it, model it and so on. It was a lot of work, difficult to store and so on, but now it has been a revolution with these battle mats. You get a nice lovely design, colour scheme, and then you just roll them away when you're finished. So they really are an excellent job. But that's the Forges of Mars battle mat being used here for this terrain setup. Then after that, you're looking to get terrain onto the board. So your main terrain features, because obviously you've got to try and play the game and have fair terrain, a good representation of terrain on the board, and then little accessories and things just to to add in to make the table look nice and realistic and a joy to fight across. So the next stage has a number of elements to the terrain being used here. So first of all, I'm using one of the pre-painted terrain sets here from Gamemat.eu. So it's one of the first sets that came out from them. It's the industrial terrain set. So it'll be this building here. I'm actually not using the full set, so their industrial terrain set it's one of the bigger sets that they do. You actually get 4 of these, so I'm using 3 here for this table, 1, 2, 3, and there's actually a 4th one that you get in the set. Then there's this larger terrain piece across here, which I have modified, so it doesn't come with this platform, but the rest of the main feature, the main building, comes as part of that set. It also includes these boxes, which I sprayed with the Army Painter Angel Green, just to match in with my Imperial stuff, but you get a selection of those. Then you also get these large containers. I think you get 4 of them. I've painted up 2. There's another 2 to add to the set on top of that as well. And you also get a selection of industrial pipes stacked up as well, which are not featuring on this table. But you also get that as part of the industrial terrain set. So really, to fill up a regular 2,000 points game for games of 40k, a full set from them, the industrial terrain set from Gamemat.eu, would fill up the table very nicely indeed. But I've gone for sort of 2/3 to a half of a set, and that means I've been able to bring in some of the Games Workshop terrain as well. And the thing is with the Gamemat.eu terrain is it scales in and matches in very nicely with Games Workshop stuff, so you can easily intermix the two together. They match up quite nicely on the table. So there's another terrain piece here. It's sort of a one-off piece that they do. It's called a warp portal. This larger piece of terrain across here, we use that as line of sight blocking terrain because of the height of it. We actually use that as a full line of sight blocking piece of terrain. But that's a single piece of terrain available from Gamemat.eu. I'll put the link for that in the video description below, but it's called the warp portal. So whilst we're talking about the industrial terrain set, so the original set that comes through is pre-painted. It comes to you in this sort of rusted metal brown sort of colour across here. And then what I've done is, instead of repainting the whole thing, I've just added in some colour and some effects on top of the original colour scheme. There is a full tutorial for that on the channel, so I'll show you from start to finish how to do that. It's very, very straightforward. Just a little bit of work, and you can just tweak the terrain to help it match in with the other terrain that you have. So this sort of this is Khorne Red actually being used here, but that colour matches in with my Adeptus Mechanicus army. It also matches in with the rest of my AdMech Games Workshop terrain, so I've been using the colour across here as well, so you're sort of linking the two colour schemes together. So then a bit of rust patches, oil patches being put on there, some chipping effect, which again, very, very easy and straightforward to do. And from my transfer sheets, my Adeptus Mechanicus from the vehicles, I've been adding some of the transfers onto the terrain pieces as well. And it just helps to match the whole thing in. So you're trying to match this into the terrain, then match this in with the rest of the terrain from Games Workshop as well, and all of the aspects all linked together to make it look like the table and all the terrain pieces matching nicely. So very easy and straightforward to do. There's also some of the metalwork, like here I started to add in some of the bronze or brass effect across here as well with that paint colour scheme. So yeah, I'm just looking, if I take this piece here, you see some of the Adeptus Mechanicus transfers fit really nice on this terrain, so I've just been using those up from the sheet just to make it look nice and AdMech themed. So that piece just sits in there. So obviously their terrain is pre-painted, it's pre-made, pre-painted. You just buy it, unpack it, and then you can use it straight away. But with a little bit of a tweak, you can make your own adjustments. That's the two colours I went for. This nice Averland Sunset, I think, is the colour I used on this particular one. You'll see it being used on some of the larger containers across the other side as well. But you can pick any colours that you want, and you can create your own theme for whichever colours you decide to use. So moving on from the pre-painted terrain set, there's another feature I've added on, as well as painting them up, to really add a great atmosphere to your battlefield and to make it really interesting, a really sort of 40k theme. That's these Imperial Posters here. You'll see them scattered around on the different terrain pieces on a variety of our battlefields. I'm a massive fan of these. I've actually done a tutorial on the channel already showing you where to get these from, how to make them yourself, applying them, painting them, processes involved, and so on. So you're welcome to tune into that video, and that'll show you how to go about getting these posters done. I think they're fantastic. Just love the idea of the posters, and they're quite straightforward to do, and you can just add them to any terrain set, whichever themed terrain set you're going to go for. You can add these in as long as there's a surface where you can stick them on, and I think they're a great accessory to have. So I'll link that again, video description below. That'll give you the tutorial for these Imperial propaganda posters. Then I'll cover this now. So you see the Munitorum armoured containers across here. I've done a tutorial for those. I think they're a fantastic piece of terrain to add into your games of 40k. You'll see on the different types of battlefields that we have wherever it is. You often see these being used. They're so versatile, you can use them in different terrain setups, whether it's desert or city or wherever. And they're stackable. So I've put these two nice and high, so it really block things out. You can hide stuff because they're solid. You can stack them up and things can hide behind them properly, so they're a great accessory to have, and they fit really nicely on this sort of industrial type terrain. These cargo containers look excellent. So that's the Munitorum armoured containers, they're called, and again there's a tutorial for them on the channel showing you how to paint those up for your games of 40k. I've done a few different colour schemes. I love this cadmium one here with the split colours. I also have done one for the Blood Angels in red, obviously, around there, and there's an ultramarine one as well. But instead of going full on blue, to split the colours there with the blue and the grey just over there. So that one across there looks good on the board. I think the more of those you can get, the better. Big fan of them, and I do look forward to adding more of those to my terrain collections. This Munitorum armoured containers, a fantastic accessory to use, and again I've sprayed them up the same grains. They're matching nicely with the Gamemat.eu set that you get. I've just checked the quantity of these. You get a dozen of those in the industrial terrain set. So then the next aspect is your Games Workshop Adeptus Mechanicas terrain. Now I've heard a rumour this stuff's being removed from sale. Games Workshop did produce a lot of it. It was included in different sets for Warhammer 40,000. It was sold separately as well. So if you're thinking about getting a hold of this stuff, then now would probably be a good time to try and track it down. If it's available from Games Workshop currently, I'm not sure, or from other hobby stores. If not, places like eBay and so on would be the places to look. It's a great terrain set. It's very unique, and it's probably wise to track it down now whilst the price is quite reasonable. As this stuff becomes more and more rare, then it's obviously going to be harder to get a hold of, and the price no doubt will go up as well. So if you're thinking about getting a hold of this stuff, then now would be the time to search for it and to get a hold of it if you can. So in games of 40k, this would be dense terrain, so you're looking at -1 shooting through it, so it adds an interesting dimension to the battles. The other great thing is your levels as well, these walkways. You're introducing a second layer on your battlefield, so you can have fighting done on the ground, but then also you can have fights taking place along the top. And then these are removable, so I've built that one like this, and this one's a separate little walkway. So you can go for different configurations and different arrangements on these. I could put this one just in here, for example, and put it in there. You can go for big sort of setups, smaller setups. There's this one across here, two separate pieces which I've linked together, like so. You can see I've put some propaganda posters on them. And again, keeping to my colour scheme. So the Khorne Red and the Averland Sunset there. Those two colours I've used in combination for this setup. These nice ladders. This one's removable. And I was talking about the way your Games Workshop terrain can link up with the Gamemat.eu stuff. So if you see here on the piping, that fits in there. It's all the same kind of match up there, so you can link in the pieces quite nicely together. So that's your piping set. I'm not sure if that's still available. That may well be a standard set that's still available from Games Workshop, but again, worth getting a hold of that as well. These terrain pieces here, these are the Warhammer 40,000 accessories. So in that you get these tank traps here and here, boxes and barrels, and so on. So what we'll do now is we'll talk about the painting the Adeptus Mechanicas terrain. I can give you a walkthrough on this because it's very, very straightforward. So the first thing is just to construct the entire thing, so just build the whole piece of terrain. And then the next stage is your undercoat. Now this looks all complex. What you're doing is just taking advantage of all the sculpting work that's been done for you by the Games Workshop team, and then just really using washes to fill in all the holes, and then just highlighting over the top, and then just some base colours. Actually the process is pretty quick, despite all the detail that you can see. So first stage after you've constructed it is a coat of plate mail. I use the Army Painter plate mail spray, like so. Washes, you give that a full coat across the whole thing, remembering to spray underneath and so on. Downside of it is that when you put washes on top, it can sort of puddle and not spread out very well. So the trick to bypass that and to make sure that your washes just spread nice and evenly across the terrain piece is then to give it, after you've sprayed it and it's dried with the plate mail, give it a spray of Munitorum Varnish from Games Workshop. Give it a spray of that, and that means that the paints and spray and the washes will just go across that nicely straight onto the silver. Just do those 2 sprays, let that dry thoroughly. Then the next stage is to put your base colours on. It's quite straightforward. I would advise that you don't try to paint too much. Just the obvious panels. If you start going too much on detail, the terrain's going to start to bog you down. You're going to get slowed up. So, for example, on here, I've just painted that hatch with the Khorne Red. Then the larger panels here, and then the outside panels along the top. That's just enough. That just gives you that colour across there without going through too much detail. So for that I'm using Khorne Red, but as I said earlier on, you can choose whichever colour you want. Just to make things a bit different, on the inside panel I've painted on the inside. Again, that's optional, but it's an easy thing to fill in with colour. I just use Shabti Bone for that one. Then you've got a lot of metallics going on with this. So sometimes just to break that up, it's a good idea to introduce a different shade of metallics. We've got a lot of silver going on, but I introduce a little bit of brass and bronze. Again, not picking out too much. But I just pick out a few areas with that colour. You can see it here on the side, just that panel there I've picked out in the brass. So for that I have used Hashut Copper, which you'll see me using across. That's the colour I use on my Adeptus Mechanicus, so it's all sort of tying the whole collection together so the terrain matches up the army. Again, you can choose whichever metallic you want, that's the one I've gone for. So that's your base colours. There's Averland Sunset there if you're going to go for that colour scheme, like so. Once all the base colours are on, it won't take you very long. Then I go for 2 washes here just to tone the whole thing right down. So Nuln Oil first of all, has to give you sort of a deeper shade. That's quite a dead colour. So then after that's completely dry, I then go for another wash on top to strengthen the shading, and also to introduce something a bit more than just sort of a flat black colour coming through, but to introduce a bit of rust. So for that I use Agrax Earthshade. If you want to go really rusty looking, then instead of the Nuln Oil, you can go for Agrax Earthshade for your strong colouring, and then you could go for something like Seraphim Sepia if you really wanted to make it look really rusty. But I didn't want to go too rusty on this thing, so I've gone for the Nuln Oil, let that dry, and then Agrax Earthshade. Using a larger brush, just stippling it in, just covering the whole thing, all your base colours up here as well, all of that shaded. With that, letting it dry. That's your base colours and your shading done, and that terrain will be alright to play on. It doesn't look too bad. But once that's dry, you can then start adding on your finishing touches. So it's a case of going back to your base colours, so repainting this across here, filling that out, leaving the shaded areas all done. All that colour, whichever colour scheme you're going to go for, repainting the Shabti Bone across here. I then take Hashut Copper, and you've shaded the whole thing with the same washes just across the whole thing. Then take the Hashut Copper, mixing that with a bit of silver. So I would mix that with Runefang Steel, about 50-50, and then just using that to highlight your copper effect there, and it gives you that nice highlighted effect. It's worth doing, it looks nice. So that's that done. Very straightforward. Just a single highlight, not repainting the original colour, but just a highlight straight on. Then the chipping effect that you can see. So use a finer detail brush for that, and that's just iron breaker. You then take the same paint, and then with a larger brush, sort of dry brush, and flick across all your metallic areas. So like on top here, just to re-emphasise and pick that all out. Won't take you very long at all. And then once that's all finished, pretty much finished after that, you can introduce a bit of rust if you want to again just add another tone into the metallic work here, and you can use a bit of Seraphim Sepia for that, just a few puddles here and there, and just to work it in to the metal work. Not too much, but just some patches of that dotted around just to break up the metallics a little bit more. And the result of that is what you see here. And there's no reason why you can't follow that process and get the exact same results. As you can see, there's an Imperial Guard propaganda poster has been added as well. Just follow the tutorial for that in the video description. Once that's complete, you want your terrain to last for a good while, so then I give another coat of the Munitorum Varnish just to key everything in. Even when the posters are on, the transfers are on, it helps seal those in to your terrain piece as well. So you can add in, yeah, you could put Space Marine, Imperial, Astra Militarum sort of transfers, but the best ones would be your AdMech transfer sheet from the vehicles. You can get some brilliant designs from there, and it would match in with the AdMech style terrain. There's a skull and cog there for the Adeptus Mechanicus, like so. But that's the effect you're looking for. I'll show you this piece here as well. So again, exactly the same process. Huge Imperial propaganda poster. Fits just nicely on the side of that. Just makes it look very nicely themed. There's a smaller poster just there as well. So, very happy with how these things are coming. I use them in so many games now. So, what great thing about your terrain, you can just, once it's done, you can use it across a variety of landscapes, and you'll be glad to have that as a resource to use in your games of 40k. So that's the tutorial for those. All the AdMech terrain, it's exactly the same process that's just been described. So these, following the same process, the pipes for the metalwork, the exact same process as well. Same process for them. All of this setup that you see across here, the exact same process. And even I've used the Ashabti bone on the panelling here of this particular piece. And then that walkthrough is the same process across here. So you're trying to unite your terrain here. We've got Games Workshop official terrain, and I've got the industrial terrain set from Gamemat.eu. And your colour scheme, the paint scheme that you use, just unites the whole thing together. That's the way that you can make the table, all the terrain just fit nicely with the table. So there's battlefield accessories, and then stones and scatter. So the stones that I've used here, look at the way they fit in with this terrain. So I found these at a beach, and in previous videos I've talked about shading and spraying them to match in with your terrain. These are the natural original colour. Didn't really need to make any changes to these, so I've kept them exactly as they are. Sometimes you'll see battle reports where the stones are placed and neatly piled around the terrain. As I try and go for some more the rugged, rough kind of look, just to try and make it look as natural as possible. So you're not too neat with the stones, just little piles here and there. It's just to break up the terrain piece and the battle mats, to raise the mat up a little bit and then to merge the terrain in, just to make the whole thing look harmonious, like this is permanently planted here. Not that you've just placed it there for a game, but the structure looks like it belongs on the battlefield. So wherever you source your stones and scatter from, natural is best. If you buy it from a shop or a builder's merchant, usually it's been sifted and sized, so it's going to look quite uniform. So if you could find a natural resource, then it is preferable. Then you get that natural kind of look. In amongst those stones and scatter, I will have pieces of just random stuff. So bits of Plastruct here, random from terrain building projects. Vehicle accessories are great. There's a hatch from something. Same process as painting this. So sprayed silver, washes, a little bit of a highlight, and that will do. When a vehicle is destroyed, if you look at photographs of destroyed vehicles, usually any kind of paint and so on is just burnt away, and you just get the rusting metal left behind, so there's not too much work involved with those kind of accessories. There's the odd las gun, bolter, backpack and so on dotted about. Anything, if you go through your bits box and find those pieces, spray them up silver, put some washes on them, and then just throw them across your battlefield as accessories. It really just brings the whole thing to life. It makes the table look like it belongs in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Just these small things can make such a huge difference, and it just adds to the immersion of the game. You feel like your army's at home on a 40k themed battlefield, and hopefully this video gives you an idea of how straightforward that is to achieve. So there's one final thing to go through. It's probably the most requested tutorial I've had. I do plan to make a tutorial, but for now I'm going to do a walkthrough on those things. The chain link fences, which have been on the channel for a decade now. People have been asking, how do you make the chain link fences? Well, for those that have been waiting for so long, I'm going to go for a walkthrough. So that should be enough to help you build your own chain link fences. I think a walkthrough will help you out. I'll give you the materials that you need. I'll link them in the video description below and go through the process of construction. So the good news is, if I just, I'll bring these across. We'll do a smaller piece. So the set that I've got, James uses them for his games as well, but I built a longer set here than a smaller one. It means you've got a bit of versatility to build how you want, but that's the two sizes, a half piece and then a full length piece across there. So if I come across like so, I'll give you an idea of how it looks. And they're not based. I've just made these things at the bottom so they just sit quite comfortably. If vehicles drive through them, just remove them from play or just lay them flat. Got the barbed wire running across the top. The good news for these is the painting process is exactly the same as that terrain across there. Just spraying them silver. You build the whole thing, spray them silver, bit of varnish over the top, then apply your 2 washes, and then re-highlight, varnish, and they're done. So same process for that is the same for these. So that's quite straightforward. So there's a number of elements here. You've got the barbed wire running across the top. You've got the mesh itself, and then you've got the actual structure of it here. So the first part is your structure. If you look here, we're using what's called H beams, I believe, because they're in the shape of the letter H. And you've got these thinner ones here, which is like in the shape of an eye, I believe. It's an eye beam, it's called, because if you look at it that way, it's like an eye. And then there's other bits that I've used. I've actually cut these pieces and stuck them on here to act as your base so that they don't fall down. So those are and I'm sure I'll put them in the video description. I'll check to see if they still exist and so on, but it's called Plastruct. It's like architects' materials. You'll find it in model railway shops and hobby shops, but usually like your model railway type shop. A lot of people like to scratch build stuff, and these really are to represent your industrial beams that are used. They're made from plastic. They come in white. They come in packs like this. And you're able to cut. They're very easy to cut. It's all the same plastic as the models across here, and you can cut them up to the size that you want and just build stuff. People like to scratch build things, and the Plastruct beams are very, very good. So they come in all sorts of sizes. So yeah, so this one is your eye beam, the shape of an eye. If you look at the end, just there on it, it's an eye shape. So again, I'll link these in the video description here, but the code on this one is an I-beam, and the code is 90515. It's 4.8 millimeters. I would imagine that's the height of it. You get 5 pieces in a pack, and it's a styrene I-beam. That's it. I think that's all you need to know. It's actually made in the USA, this one, Plastruct, but I've seen these in my local model railway shop. You can find them online. You probably find them on eBay, so you can get a hold of those. But one pack of that size will probably be all you need to do a set of the fences. So that's your I-beam. That's the beam that runs across here. Then your H-beam, which is your upright, it's a bit sturdier, is this one here. Again, Plastruct. It's 4.8 millimeter again, styrene column it's called, 5 pieces in the pack. Code for that is 90545. Check the video description. I should be able to do links for you, shouldn't be a problem. And you need to build the base here. You could use these materials, but I actually used larger I-beams from this pack here. So these are thicker. That's the kind of the end to them. They're brilliant material, they're so easy to work with. And this one, if you want to get a hold of these, it's a styrene 7.9 millimeter. The code for that is 90517. Get 4 pieces in a pack. And that's something with a bit more thickness to it. So I was able to show you the construction of the base there. I was able to cut them in triangles and stick them on. You can use super glue, I think, is your best option for gluing these together. So that's your structure, and it's basically 2 I-beams running across, 2 columns running down, and then you're building your plates there at the bottom to act as your base. And then that one is just twice the size, but the same structure. So I don't really need to give you measurements as such, because you're free to do what you want. I mean, that looks about 3 inches across there and about 6 inches across there. That's kind of roughly the kind of size you can go for, but it's entirely up to you. Just, I would say, make sure you just build them all, whichever size you decide on, just make sure you build them all uniform size. So make sure that one's half the size of that one, whichever dimensions you decide to go for, but you're free to make up your own mind as to what you want to do. But they're so versatile, you can stick them anywhere on the table. You can fence off areas, increase barricades and defences and so on, and they just look fantastic on the table. We've had these on the channel now for 10 years, and they've stood the test of time. So very thematic. And you just spend an evening building them. So you're building all your structure, and then the actual chain link fence itself, this mesh. So I got this stuff here. It's actually aluminium mesh used for repairing damage on cars. Here, it's showing you the process of repairing damage. The idea is you chop away an area of rust, you plug it with this stuff, and then put filler over the top. But it's aluminium mesh. I got a pack of 2. I found this on eBay, so again, you can look for that. It's for reinforcing holes, cracks in metal and plastics. It's aluminium, so it's quite flexible. It's not going to rust on you as well, so it's nice, durable stuff. So again, once you've chosen your height and width, just cutting this stuff out to fit. You can cut it with normal scissors and just cut out the piece that you need, making sure it fits. And then you can glue it. On the first piece that I ever made, I glued the mesh across here to the I-beams, but it didn't look very nice. It looked quite untidy. You could see the glue coming through on one side. So instead, I took small pieces of wire and then just put them through the holes of the mesh. If I zoom in, you can see the wire that's been wrapped around using pliers, wrapped it around the I-beam, no glue required, and that's held them in place, and they've never come loose. So you can get a hold of some wire like this. That's just a roll of copper wire. Again, that's not going to rust on you, that's not going to break. It's nice and flexible, nice and pliable, so you can actually bend it around. It's a bit of a softer metal than steel, so copper's quite a good idea. Once you spray it, you won't see the copper colour on there. So easily done, and that just, you can see, that just holds the mesh in place. And I built mine in such a way, if I flip it round, that it's just tucked in, so that the mesh, you cut it precisely, the mesh just tucks into the H-beam and disappears away. So take your time. It's sort of a one-off set that you're going to build, and it's worth just taking your time getting it right, and you've got use of that set then for a long time. So then finishing touches, I would rough the mesh up a little bit, just stabbing it with the end of a paintbrush, just making it sort of uneven, just like in real life. This is a war zone, so perhaps bullet holes and damage and vandalism on it, so you can see holes punched through. Again, you can just use a small file or the end of a brush just to punch that through where bullet holes and shells have whizzed through and gone through. Just a bit of battle damage on there. Sometimes make holes as small or as large as you want. Perhaps some Tyranids have tried ripping through. You can mess up the ends here as well. Someone's tried breaking through the bottom of it just there, just trying to add a bit of realism. And the final finishing touch is your wire on top. You don't have to go for that, but I just think it looks very, very cool. So Games Workshop used to produce that. I'm not sure if they still do, but it's as barbed wire. If you look up 28mm barbed wire, you can probably find it on eBay. There'll be other alternates to Games Workshop that sell it as a pack, but you can get a hold of that, string it out across the top, and you can actually tie it in. You can use the mesh to hold it in place. If you put a cut in the mesh, drop the wire down, and then twist it back over again, you can get that wire to sit on top of the mesh. I think it's a great finishing touch just to make it look like a real security fence. Once all that's done and it's constructed and you're happy, then you're spraying the whole thing, even though there's metal parts and so on, spraying the whole thing with the silver, making sure that all that white disappears from the Plastruct material. So spray the whole thing in silver, then spray with the Munitorum Varnish, and then after that comes your 2 washes. So just stippling it on, not too thick that it starts to pull on the holes of the mesh there, but use your Nuln Oil, Agrax Earthshade, let it dry, and then just a flick highlight with a larger brush with the iron breaker, and then that will give you a nice metallic finish, and that's the same process as this, so the two are going to match up quite nicely. But that's a very detailed run through of those. James is borrowing some, I've got 2 here, but I think I did 2 of those and 4 of those, and that was a nice set. Now that same process you can use to make walkways. So the same kind of process you could make walkways between buildings, very, very cool. And it was the same process that I actually used across here to build the platform. So with this platform, you see, we were often in games trying to place models on top, and sometimes they fall down and so on, and we wanted a larger area to place other pieces of terrain or larger models on top. So I built these 2 platforms from spare Plastruct material. Same process, just use the H-beams across here, the I-beams to fill in the gaps, and then the wider beams to make these struts across here. It took a while, it's a bit fiddly. I think it was worth it because the amount of times we've set stuff up on top, I think it's been well worth doing. But built 1, built 2 across the other side. Use super glue. It is a fiddly thing to do, so this is just a one-off thing that I've done, but just showing the same process, and then using the mesh to fill out the platform on top. So it just makes it more workable for games of 40k. You can just measure straight up for movement on top, and then models will balance on top just nicely. But it shows you what you can do with those materials. It's not just the fences, but you can also build walkways and so on. You can also see this bit on top of this walkway. You just do that as a separate piece and use that to span across from one piece of terrain to the next, so that models can run across and so on. You can build your own walkways. Another very cool accessory that you can do. So very versatile. When you're building your own scratch built stuff, then you can do all sorts of different things. So I think that was well worth doing. Very happy for that to come out. And then the chain link fences have been a good job as well. But that's those accessories. These are optional if you want to challenge yourself to something a bit more complex, but rewarding enough if you're able to pull it off. Okay, so that's pretty much the full tutorial. I've gone through everything on this board, so what you see here, there's no reason why you can't get the same results. Just follow along each step. There is a bit of work involved. Some bits are easier than others. Obviously the battle mat is the easiest piece to get a hold of. That'll give you a foundation. Then from there we have talked about the pre-painted, pre-built industrial terrain set from Gamemat.eu. So it sort of comes in this shade here. I've then done a very easy process there of just adding my own colours to that. That is very, very straightforward. Again, as I've said, the link for that is in the video description below. How to upgrade your set of industrial terrain from Gamemat.eu. So that's all those buildings across there, plus more. Then after that, you add MECH terrain, which I've run through the tutorial for painting those. Get a hold of that terrain if you can. The pipes are a great addition to this terrain piece. Just adds a really interesting dimension to the board. Then we talked about accessories. The Munitorum armoured containers is a tutorial for that. We've done a run through on the fences. The warp portal, another pre-painted terrain set from Gamemat.eu. And then just your accessories, stones scattered around the board. A nice finishing touch to this table. But that is the Industrial Adeptus Mechanicus Martian Terrain Battlefield setup here. One of the terrain setups that we've used a lot in our games of 40k. So some processes easier than others. You can pick and choose what you want to do, or you can go the full hog here and just copy everything that you see on the board. You're welcome to follow all the tutorials and to get the same results for your own setups of 40k. What we'll do is we'll finish the video off here with some music and some panning around this battlefield to give you some inspiration for your own battlefield setups. Do check out the other videos in the tutorial, just a nice variety now of different terrain setups that you can do with the full information and guidance of how to achieve the same results for your own setups for your own games of 40k. That's the video. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time.